Hello, this is Nicole, and this is Pretty Amazing People podcast. It's a pretty exciting one. It's something very new for me. My guest today is a Harvard educated doctor, pioneering environmental health advocate, organizer for people, planet, and peace. I love that one. I get to talk to her about, I have questions, and also I wanted her to talk about things that I'm hoping to share with listeners that help me fight certain beliefs, propaganda we've been told. It's a great conversation. I got to have an intimate tea with her even when we weren't recording. She just was so nice and spent time with me, and I just couldn't say enough nice things about her. But here is my guest today. She's the Green Party presidential candidate 2024, Dr. Jill Stein. Hi, Jill. Dr. Jill Stein, thank you so much for your time and being here today.
My pleasure, Nicole. I'm really looking forward to talking.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to first confess to you, I was thinking of not voting this year. And then you joined the race, and I've been watching you. I have been listening to you. You're out there. You're doing so much. I saw you got arrested on the campuses. Your numbers in the polls, you're doing a lot. You're doing amazing. You gave me hope. So I want to share the things that you've said that have convinced me, and I really want to share all the things that you've been talking about. So you're experienced. This is not your first race. You know the tricks of the game. So I don't know much about your medical. So tell me a little bit about your medical and how you got into politics.
Okay, so, I grew up during the Vietnam War, the women's movement, the environmental movement. All of that was just like discovering the world and that we could make it a better place. So I grew up with a real sense of, I guess, just commitment to social justice and community. It was just like in my bones. And, I grew up in a Jewish family, in a Jewish community after the Holocaust and the Second World War. So genocide was a very big deal in our house. And I was really raised with the understanding that genocide would never happen again, not to anybody. So it just made me, there were all these things that made me an activist, and then I was growing up in the middle of the Vietnam War and all that. And I was just, being an activist was always in my bones. To make a long story short, I wound up going to medical school and working as a medical doctor. I'm an internist. I've done general medicine for decades, but when you are in the doctor's office, you see that the doctor can't fix everything that ails you. That doctors mostly give us pills and send us on our way, and we're kind of left to struggle with this crazy world and all of its things that make us sick, from a corporate food supply that has the nutrients taken out and some garbage put in, to, dirty air, unclean and unsafe water, excuse me. And, poverty. Poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in this country. War. War is a leading cause of death. Not so much in our country because we don't send people. We just send our weapons to war. We kill other people, but it puts us at risk. And, we're very much at risk going forward now for a whole lot of reasons. So at any rate, I just found myself giving people pills and sending them back out. And I became very involved in trying to clean up our air and our water, and working with community groups and with issues of environmental racism and, toxic waste sites that are poisoning the water in various communities. I became involved in all that. And there I discovered that usually our government is not working with us. They're working against us. They're working for the polluters, for the exploitive businesses, for, commercial enterprises, for the health insurance companies that are not giving us adequate health care and are bankrupting us. So I just discovered that the government is usually on the wrong side of things. And then basically, to make a long story short, I got tricked into running for office by the Green Party. I had been a part of Ralph Nader's campaign, which I found absolutely wonderful and inspiring, and he was saying all the right stuff. That was the first time I ever was involved with anything political, because growing up during the Vietnam War, I saw that the Democratic Party was right up there with the Republican Party as war makers, as, sending out the cops to beat people up on the street. I didn't want to have anything to do with politics as I knew it. I was exactly, where you're describing yourself, Nicole, as, before you got involved with our campaign. It was the same thing for me and lots of people in my generation. We saw the two parties as basically corrupt, serving powerful special interests like the war industry and Wall Street. That's basically what they're about. And, so I for the first time, became involved as a candidate at the tender young age of 50. Okay, it took me 50 years. So you're way ahead of me. It took me 50 years to actually, get deeply involved in the political process. And I learned at that point that people don't like this, and you don't have to run campaigns the way the corporate parties run them, which is where you have the political elites serving the economic elites, and they tell you what you can say and what your issues are going to be. And, you're a corporate candidate. You're just a cutout. You're not a thinking, feeling, breathing human being. And so I discovered, wow, there's this whole other way to run politics, which is of, by, and for the people. Excuse me. And so once I started seeing that, I couldn't unsee it. That was like 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. That was in the year 2000. So that was like, 24 years ago. And I moved from clinical medicine to political medicine to address the mother of all illnesses, our sick, toxic political system that's we need to fix so we can deal with all the other things that are literally killing us. So that's kind of what I was doing in medicine. I very quickly moved into kind of the community basis of health and disease and survival, essentially.
Yeah, on a bigger level. Wow. I think that's why I hear you speak, and you're the first time I feel like you speak to me, like not scripted. I've seen you out there too. It's like you're, just saying everything that's like humanity. And I love that. So it's funny because
And I'll just, jump on that to say, to me, it is a real betrayal of the political process that this is the exception and not the rule. For me, this is what I hear from all Green Party candidates, and likewise, Claudia de la Cruz, or even Cornel West. These are real people running on real issues, and we are not like plastic cutouts, which you have to be if you are running in a in one of the corporate political parties. And this is what we deserve, as voters, as part of a democracy. This is the way that it absolutely should be. And
so, well, I heard you say you're hearing it a lot. I've never been very political. This is new to me. And yes, I am joining. And I think we have a very strong reservoir of people because you say, like, there's so many people that just don't vote, because they don't want to vote. There's nobody to vote for. And that's why I really believe you have a strong chance because we need somebody we want to vote for. I will not also be told I have to vote for somebody. What's the point of voting if we have to vote for somebody we don't want? So talk about that and where that there are votes for you out there.
well, absolutely. And I think most people are voting with their feet by not voting. And the largest single voting block are those who choose not to vote for either of the like political elites that are being rammed down their throats. And it's not just in this election. In 2016, when I was running for the second time, actually, that voting block, if I remember correctly, was about 100 million people, which is that's enough to win a three-way race. It's a lot of people right now who choose not to validate this system, which doesn't validate them. A system that systematically throws people under the bus, whether it's, a living wage. Joe Biden had made this promise that he was going to raise the minimum wage to 15 an hour, but when push came to shove, he didn't vote for it. The squad even didn't stand up for it. People are being just really slaughtered on wages, on healthcare, on rent, with half of renters paying over 30% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. So it's not working. It's completely understandable that people are voting with their feet to say no to this system. And what people need to know is that we actually have the power here. There's a famous saying from Alice Walker, the poet novelist, that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We actually have it, especially in this election where people are just, completely off the charts in really resenting these zombie candidates that are being forced down our throats again. So people are really hungry for something worth voting for, and not about to be pushed into voting for what they don't want, which in my view is absolutely right. I think that's not a democracy. If you're voting for who you're told to vote for, that's outrageous. And it's not a democracy if you're told you only have two choices who've been approved by the political parties that are bought and paid for by Wall Street and the war machine and the health insurance companies and the big real estate industry. That's outrageous that those are our two choices. So I think people like you are the really smart people who really understand what democracy looks like. And it looks like supporting candidates that we want. Just bear in mind that this is part of the propaganda that, call it empire or oligarchy. This is what they use. The political elites use propaganda like this to try to talk you out of your power. Why are they doing that? Because they are quaking in their boots that people are waking up right now for all kinds of reasons. It's the large majority of Americans, 68% actually, according to Reuters poll, 68% of Americans object, are horrified by the genocide and want it to end now, want a diplomatic solution. That's way more than the majority. So for people to know that there will be one anti-genocide campaign on the ballot, there will be 3 pro-genocide campaigns, and hopefully they will all split the pro-genocide vote among each other, and there will be one strong unifying vote for working people against war, against genocide, a climate action campaign. There will only be one of those. If you split the vote 4 ways, you can win the election with as little as 26% of the vote. So don't let anybody talk you out of your power or tell you that it's hopeless. It's not hopeless. And whether we win the White House or we simply win the day by building this political movement so that we can win it, maybe in the next election or the next after that, this is a time for us to stand up, because it's more clear than ever that we are really on a trajectory right now of just devastation, and people are already facing crisis in every dimension of their lives. So it's really important that we reject this propaganda of powerlessness, which you have done, Nicole, because you have the courage of your convictions and you're not brain dead. We all need to, not be brain dead and resist the propaganda that tells us we're supposed to hold our nose and just be brain dead. No, we deserve a democracy, and we deserve candidates that serve us and that support what you need as voters and as
Otherwise,
just human
it's
beings.
hopeless, right? Like, we're hopeless. These students coming out with the debts. Yeah, we're not making livable wages. Healthcare is ridiculous. I share still crazy stories. I'm in Los Angeles, and I know that you're much loved in Michigan. I'm flying to Michigan, where I used to live, to my old dentist to pay
Oh,
cash. It's like,
oh my God. Wow.
it's so ridiculous. Insurance and all the games and the money. And yeah, I feel like it's hopeless if we don't believe and we don't make the change now. And I think you've got the following, we've got this youth, the students are the future. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, people are facing despair, really in every dimension of their lives. Many people don't have a job that they love. Lots of people don't have a job at all. And then lots more people are really rammed into these awful abusive jobs and don't have control over their schedules. They are basically on a on-demand type schedule, like the railroad workers, who were on strike. There was a railroad union that was on strike, and Joe Biden, our supposed, working man's hero, forced the laborers, the railroad workers, forced them to accept this contract that they had already rejected and prohibited them from going on strike. So they had to deal with these horrific working conditions where you would have like two people supervising a train that would be 2 miles long. There was no way that could be safe. And they're on, these horrible on-demand scheduling. So they can go, have these incredible back-to-back shifts and never get time off, never get time. They can't schedule time with their families. They have completely unpredictable and inhuman schedules. And this was like the decision of our president and the Democratic Party to take away the one power that they had as working people, which is the power to strike and to demand a contract that actually represents their needs. And they were forbidden from doing that, which basically says to labor, you have no power and you are just, you're going to be the victims from here on out. That's the best that we could get from the Democratic Party, from the progressive Democrats, and from Joe Biden. The promise about wages, the promise about a public option for healthcare to ensure that there would be some affordable form of insurance. The public was demanding Medicare for all, which would cover your dental bills and your mental health care and your reproductive health care and your chronic care and your home care. And still, it would cut the cost by 30% because it eliminates the red tape and the bureaucracy and the paper pushing. This is a much better way to do it. They don't deliver. They deliver for their corporate donors because these parties, the political elites, the Republicans and the Democrats, are sponsored by big money. They can take money in very large chunks, up to $600,000 in a single check. It's actually not legal, but they have loopholes that they exploit. They work with super PACs that allow people to give unlimited amounts of money, and it can be anonymous as well, coming in through various loopholes that I won't bore you with the details on, but basically they work the system. Once money and power starts concentrating in few hands, they then have the ability to buy out our elected officials. And then they get even more great deals and policies that further concentrate money and power. And it really requires, excuse me, a big pushback, a big uprising here. We're not going to fix this around the margins. This isn't just one issue. It's not just war. It's not just Wall Street. It's not just healthcare. It's not just student debt, which is virtually impossible to get out of in the current economy. It's not just lousy jobs and lousy rights for workers. It's all of that stuff together. We really need a system that puts people, planet, and peace over profit, which is to say a system that takes money out of politics and puts the people back in so that we are the directors of our political system, not the oligarchs, not the billionaires and the bankers who are running the show through the Democratic and Republican parties.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question because I know a big issue for people is what will happen to Social Security if you win, or as they fear, other candidates win?
Yeah. The Democrats and Republicans are not, and Donald Trump is all over the map on this. Sometimes he talks about saving Social Security. Sometimes he talks about, destroying it. So I think, you can't count on anything from the Republicans. They are likely to go after the so-called entitlements. They've been threatening to do that for a long time. The Democrats have also been threatening to do that for a long time, going all the way back to Obama and even before. They have been salivating over the, the benefits to their big donors of cutting back on Social Security, cutting taxes in any way that they can, cutting payroll taxes, which supports Social Security. So, between them, they are likely to, continue the attack on Social Security and the other thing, Medicare. Medicare is already under attack in a very big way, equally under Democrats as Republicans. They're trying to privatize Medicare. This whole thing, what do they call it? I'm forgetting the name. Medicare Advantage is what they call it. It's basically a privatization scheme. It's outrageous. The Democrats have been enabling this and pushing it, as well as the Republicans. So all of the things that we hold dear really are, public higher education used to be mostly free. In my era, you could pay very little in public colleges and have an education. In California, it was mostly free. And they're going after all of that. They are reducing taxes for the wealthy and increasing taxes on everyday working people. So it's a mess. What will happen for us, and by the way, people can go to my website, jillstein2024.com, and you can just look at the platform and see what it is that we will do. There's a lot we can do even on day one, just with presidential powers. There's a huge amount we can do, like shutting down the genocide in
I definitely
Gaza.
getting to.
We can stop that on day one, so we can come back to that. But in terms of Social Security, all you have to do to save Social Security, they pretend, they bitch and moan about, oh, Social Security is screwed and oh, it's going to go bankrupt in whatever it is, 20 years now, 25 years. That's all the product of their policymaking. All you have to do is raise the cap. Right now, if you're wealthy, you don't pay very much into Social Security relative to your income. So everybody should be paying the same proportion, but they cap it when you get to whatever it is, $140,000 income, something like that. So once you become financially secure, you stop paying in greater increments proportional to your wealth and your income. Everybody should be paying the same proportion, not the same, basically flat tax that it becomes at that point. So just by raising the cap, this artificial cap that benefits the wealthy, we can ensure that Social Security will be here for the long haul. And we are intent on actually increasing Social Security payments so that people actually have money they can live on through Social Security, because it's become just far too little relative to inflation. And yeah, I know there's a cost of living thing built in, but it doesn't really cover the degree that costs are skyrocketing right now. So, elders are having a very hard time keeping a roof over their heads now. So we need to keep Social Security strong and strengthen it. There's a lot that we can do in addition. We call for a guaranteed income above poverty for everyone, instead of,
We need
well,
it's
what's that?
yeah, it's getting ridiculous, the cost of living. We're all
Oh,
gonna struggling, not just and the senior citizens. It's scary. How is
that's right.
it, as you've been pointing out, all the tricks, as you said, that it's like the Democrats believe, like, my eyes are not seeing what I'm being told. Like, our economy is great, really. Everybody I know is really worse than ever. The jobs, I know many people can't find jobs. Um, the environment, you said Joe Biden just signed something that's tricking us that we're in trouble with that as well.
Yes.
That
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I could say quite a bit about all those things. Let me start with rent, because, rent is probably the most immediate crisis for the largest numbers of people. Because if you get evicted, that's drastic. That is a drastic assault on your life, your health, your future, your job, everything. And there are so many people who are just very precariously paying their rent right now and are paying a huge portion of their income to pay their rent and to stave off eviction. the numbers of homeless people are off the charts. They're at the highest on record now. You know, child poverty is also, you know, off the charts. People are just marginally compensated right now, just barely hanging in. But this is a fixable problem. You know, we can, for number one, you know, we can implement federal rent control so that rents are stabilized. They stop going up, you know, and you begin to have, we also call for a renter's bill of rights. So you can't be evicted just so that your landlord can jack up the rents, you know, or he can't jack up the rents and then evict you. You know, we need a renter's bill of rights. We also have to prevent evictions without just cause as well. You know, and then together with providing attorneys, housing attorneys need to be readily available so that people can defend where they live and not just be subject to abusive practices by landlords. And we need to increase the supply of housing. The countries that have been successful in doing this, they call it social housing. It's mixed income housing. It creates quality housing at various income levels, but it's mixed and it creates livable communities with, you know, with healthy, climate resilient housing that's focused around some degree of green space, because green space is essential to maintain your health and your mental health. You need to have a place to get out and walk, or to be able to walk to work in pleasant, you know, environments, so you're not just breathing tailpipes all the way. You know, we need to have communities that are designed with public transportation in mind, integrated communities. And so we need a housing program. We need a housing program that addresses the housing crisis along with the environmental crisis and the climate crisis and the economic crisis. And all of this is knit together in our proposals in what we call a Green New Deal. So it's like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression, but it's green. So it also meets the climate crisis at the same time, because it's 126 degrees now in India. You know, you're not going to be able to live through this. And yes, it's India, but it's also happening here. We also have a drought in Colorado right now, in the Colorado River. We have a big drought, a very prolonged drought in the Southwest, you know, which is contributing to the fires and, you know, these mega fires. And the fact that the rivers are drying up. The Colorado River just happens to supply the water for the California agriculture system, which just happens to supply half of the fruits and vegetables for the entire country. So the fact that we're running out of water in the Colorado River is an absolute emergency. That's why on day one, you know, I would declare a climate emergency, which the environmental and climate movement has been begging for a long time. Because once we declare a climate emergency, we not only have the ability to shut down a whole lot of new fossil fuel infrastructure and not build it in the first place, we can shut much of that down, but we also then unleash, get this, it's more than $500 billion every year is unleashed to deal with this ongoing emergency. So we then have funding to start creating jobs that make our communities healthy, resilient, and climate climate adapted. So we're creating jobs for clean renewable energy, for solarizing our rooftops, especially for wind towers, for geothermal heating and cooling. So we can really ramp down on, on our energy needs at the same time that we are creating millions of jobs. And we have the funding to kickstart this actually on day one, as well as the authority to shut down the endless explosive wars.
I was gonna get to that. Let's go ahead, because that can't be good for the environment. I don't know why people don't talk about that more. Like, that is the atmosphere, our oceans. Some people aren't seeming to see the humanity issues. So, but let's talk about why I know a lot of people don't know what APAC is and why that's a big threat here. And they need to learn what APAC is. Yeah, would you explain that to some people? And
Yes. APAC is the lobby, excuse me. APAC is the lobby group for basically for Israel and for policies that favor Israel. It's called the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Maybe with a slight variation on that, but it's definitely the Israel Public Affairs Committee. And they are a lobby group that also contributes money to candidates who will vote in favor of the AIPAC agenda, which is basically the pro-Israel agenda.
And big
And I want
to go against you.
very big money, and they will exactly, they will fund and they will recruit an opponent if you have taken positions. They will ensure that you are going to have opposition. They will be putting money for your opponent and against you. They will have a whole public relations campaign. They often win the day. They don't always win the day, but they very often do. Am I concerned about AIPAC? Personally, no, because I'm at war with their issues and, you know, with the endless war
So are
and with
many of us. That's why.
exactly. So, you know, I don't live in fear of AIPAC. AIPAC, you could put an end to AIPAC simply by classifying AIPAC as a foreign agent. They should be registered as a foreign agent because essentially they are, and they always have been. John F. Kennedy was going to insist that the predecessor of AIPAC, which had a slightly different name, that they were going to have to register as a foreign agent. And once they do that, they can no longer continue to buy out our politicians. But truth to tell, I don't think anybody should be buying out our politicians. I think the health insurance companies or big pharma also should not be allowed to buy out our politicians. There's a system solution here as well, which is to have publicly funded elections and to repeal Citizens United. And, you know, that was the Supreme Court decision that basically said, you know, unlimited amounts of money, you know, go to it. Billionaires, you own this political system, basically. So there are a number of rules that need to be tweaked, but there's a lot we can do right now to basically start funding the public financing alternative. In my home state, we passed such an alternative public funding system. The state of Maine has it as well. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't fix everything, but it goes a long way. In my home state, once we passed public financing, guess who repealed it? The Progressive Democrats repealed it after we, the people, passed it on a referendum that won by huge margins. The Democrats repealed it, which told me, this was back in the year 2001, I think. It told me that the Democratic Party is hopeless if the Progressive Democrats are leading the charge here to basically revert to as corrupt a system of politics as possible. That really is kind of the mother of all illnesses here, you know, of our political system, is the big money. So absolutely, we can fight back against AIPAC, but we can also fight back as a, you know, as a public force on behalf of people, planet, and peace. There are ways to fight back. Recently, Summer Lee, who's a progressive congressperson in Philadelphia, she just beat AIPAC in her reelection campaign.
Yes, true.
So it can be done.
And I've heard you talk, and I would go, you're much better than me. You have strong ties to Israel, so you have a personal, you care about both. And but yet you are very active on ending, and you're one of the only politicians who uses the word in the US, genocide. So how did that happen? Or, you know, what are you going to do about it? And does opposing Israel make us anti-Semitic? Let's get that one out.
Let's actually start with that, because Judaism and Zionism are different things. So Zionism is the ideology that the Jews own the state of Israel, and the state of Israel, and maybe beyond the state of Israel, maybe an even bigger chunk of the Middle East. I have never been a student of Zionism myself, so I don't know exactly what it says. But, you know, there are a lot of people out there who believe that the Jews own Israel. And that's not true. You know, Jews have lived in Israel side by side with Muslims and Christians. And it's actually been a very peaceful place. This is not a religious conflict. Zionism grew up in the mid 1800s, and Zionism basically told Jews that they were insecure everywhere else. In many places, they have been, mostly in Europe. So not in the Middle East, not in Muslim countries. This is like in Christian countries, the Jews have been persecuted. Not in Muslim countries. So Jews have been subject to persecution, as many ethnic groups have. Jews don't have a monopoly on genocide. The U.S. Conducted genocide on indigenous people here. Indigenous people have been subject to genocide all over the world, which is absolutely horrific on every count. But Zionism holds that the Jews own Israel and have a right to displace the people who have been there for millennia, actually, and they've been extremely vicious and have had essentially a plan of ethnic cleansing from the start, from the origins of the state of Israel. And hang on just one second. My phone is blowing up here. What is this? All right. I'm sorry. I will try to ignore my phone here.
I love that you said that because I have people who don't understand. So I wanted to explain APAC and Zionism. So I'm so glad you went into that.
Yes, and to just finish, there is a peaceful future here, and a state, whether you're wedded to one state or two state, at the end of the day, the region needs to be a place of equal rights, of justice, of protection, of equal citizenship, and security, regardless of religion. I do not believe in ethno-states and religious ethno-states, and it's not like that provides you security. What provides us all security, because then you just have warring states. What provides us security is a human rights agenda and respecting and appreciating humanity and in all of its diversity. And that includes diverse religions or no religion at all. We have a model for, a multi-religious, multi-ethnic state, which is what Jerusalem was and the area of Palestine was. That's what it should be. Again, we should all be free from the river to the sea, and not just this river to the sea, but from all rivers to all seas. Gaza is a, it's kind of like a microcosm of the problem of empire and oligarchy and the rule of one group over another. We need to generalize democracy. We need to actually reclaim the promise of democracy, even right here at home, where we pretend we're a democracy. And then when we send in, the riot police to create a riot on campuses where students are just standing up to say what the American people themselves believe, what the International Court of Justice has validated, what the criminal court has also validated. The cops are being called out to basically assault people who are standing up for just American values, as well as our rights to free speech and
You were
to
knocked
protest.
over. I saw like you were knocked over.
Oh, yeah. I was assaulted with a bicycle used as a battering ram,
And they
basically.
used you and said arrested you under, go ahead and.
Yeah, they told me as the cop in front of me, so that you can see on these videos that we are being battered with this bicycle. My campaign manager and deputy campaign manager were on either side of me, and we were basically assaulted with this bicycle battering ram by several cops who were trying to push us over back onto our heads. And as they, as we're like, I'm going like this, just barely maintaining my balance. And one of the cops in front of me bends down and picks up my leg and jerks it up, like to knock me over backwards. But I was luckily able to jerk forward and recover my balance miraculously. I didn't fall at that moment with his kind of shove. And he said to me at that time, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to the effect, "You're under arrest for assaulting a police officer." But I think they do this when they're afraid that they're going to be charged with
It
assault.
sounds
And when I was
exactly like
in,
what's happening overseas.
yes,
I'm a Palestinian and I know exactly how they're treated. And
oh yes,
sadly, are the Western media here. It's very frustrating. And I know people, as I told you, where I live, they don't understand the truth of how they live and how they are oppressed. They are under occupation. There was a ceasefire before October 7th. The misinformation here and the story they are given, I want people to be mad. Like we're talking about the homeless, the medical, the housing. Where does our money go? We are paying
Exactly.
billions to pay for these settlers, the bombs. Yeah, give us a little information on that, some facts, so people.
Yes. Yes. And also just to one of the points you made about how people are being brutalized here, like they are brutalized in Palestine, although it's not as bad here as it is there because there are no constraints on them there. But our police forces are now being trained by the Israeli occupation forces. So it's no surprise to see that these horrible, violent, dehumanizing tactics are suddenly like appearing in our communities, along with tasers and drones and armored vehicles and all this like war equipment. We are being made war on, like the way that Israel makes war on the Palestinians. Those tools, are coming back to bite us here. It's absolutely outrageous. And yes, it's also coming back to bite us in that this is where our resources are going. This is like half of our congressional budget, over half now, is being spent on endless wars and the endless war machine. And the average household now has spent $12,000 this year alone in order to fund the war on Palestinians, the war going on in Ukraine, which is a proxy war for the US empire to basically try to wear down Russia. It's not going to work. It's actually backfiring in a very big way. And the US continues to throw, $60 billion just the other week, $60 billion into pouring gasoline on this fire. It's an absolutely futile fire. It merely kills and devastates Ukrainians above all. And that war is being escalated in a way which is just unbelievably dangerous. So that's why, when we say we want healthcare or we want dental care or we want affordable housing, they say, oh, I'm sorry, or to keep children out of poverty. And those rates just doubled when they allowed the COVID tax provisions for children in poverty. They allowed that to expire. Poverty rates doubled in children. Oh, we don't have the money for children in poverty here in this country, but we have the money to slaughter children in Gaza. Who benefits from this? Well, the ones who benefit is basically the war industry and also the banks
Making
and the
big
fossil
money.
fuel industry. Yeah, they are making out like bandits here, while the people of the world are just enduring unbelievable suffering that's just off the charts. And we're being like diverted and taught to, go to brunch and, celebrate and have fun and don't even think about it. It's not really happening. That's kind of the message that we're
I
hearing.
live on my,
But, what's that?
know you do too. I live on my phone. I call it, I have coffee and tears every morning, and I've heard you talk about it too. I've heard your rage, which is like why I go, she's human, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
things we're seeing.
It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And we can't stop talking about it and we can't stop fighting it. And it's important to remember that we actually have the power here. It's actually against the law. It is against 3 US laws, and there may be more that I don't know about, but at least 3 US laws are being violated every time the president approves more weapons transfers to Israel.
Very ignored. I mean, he is not, it's, we are in a dictatorship. Like, it's just been very upsetting. And
Oh,
I'm taking up so much of your time, but I'm going to share something and then ask you last question. So, a friend in the West Bank who has drones, I'm FaceTiming with friends, family. They live in fear. They're killing people out on the streets. The kids go to school. She told me, you got to get out of there. I had no idea it was so bad when she heard about my health care and some of the things. She's in the West Bank. Like, I'm
He's
back.
telling
Like,
you.
I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she couldn't believe, like, we go to the doctor, we go to the dentist, I mean, and they live under occupation, and, yeah, they think, like, when they're starting to hear our stories, like, "Wow."
Yeah, yeah, it's really true. I mean, we pay with our lives, we pay with our lives for the abuse that we get. Poverty, is the number 4 cause of death in this country. There 1/3 of COVID deaths are linked in this country to the lack of health care. That was over 300,000 people who basically died from lack of health care during the COVID period, and we remain at risk. There are about 70,000 deaths every year, COVID aside, from the lack of health care. Half of renters are at risk for losing their housing. And when you lose your housing, your mortality goes way up. This kinds of stress and despair that Americans live with is incredible. And the kind of despair that's imposed on Palestinians right now is also unbelievable. But the fact that young people in this country, half of young people are hopeless about the future, and 1/4 of young people say that they have considered harming themselves within the last 2 weeks before the poll because they're so desperate about the future. So yes, we are in desperate straits. But we have an out here. We actually have the capacity to take power and to rise up. And this is actually attainable. Remember, it's a 4-way race. 3 of those candidates will be splitting the pro-war, pro-genocide vote. There will be one pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide, climate emergency campaign that will be unifying those movements. This is a question of whether we can get the word out, because if we can get the word out and there's a 4-way split in the vote, you can win the election with as little as 26% of the vote. We're running as high as 4% in some national polls. We're running actually 8% in Wisconsin, 22% in Wisconsin among people 30 and under who've begun to educate themselves, who are on social media, who are spreading the word. So I really urge you, go to jillstein2024.com and join the team. You can help ensure that we're on the ballot. And just by going to our social media, because we are suppressed on social media. I am shadow banned. I'm classified along with WikiLeaks. That's, like Julian Assange's organization. I'm actually really proud to be classified in anything with Julian Assange, who is an innocent man, who is a patriot beyond all patriots, who is serving the American public by empowering and informing us. That's what he's on the hook for, because he held power to account for corruption, war crimes, and abusive use of our public funding. Julian Assange has stood up on all of that. I get to be classified with him. I'm so honored that the powers that be, consider me in that same category of threat. That's awesome. They are out to silence us. And that is a badge of honor for us, for we who are struggling. Don't let them talk you out of your power. We have the power. This is all about standing together and standing up, because when we stand together, we're absolutely unstoppable. The way you feel is how most of America feels. They are fed up. They are done being thrown under the bus, and they are ready to mobilize. So I can't tell you, I just came out of the petition drive in New York, where all these people were suddenly discovering the campaign for the first time. And it was just resonating across communities. And we had thousands of people who were out to help us overcome these very repressive ballot access laws that required us.
Amazing. You're a little
It,
short, but we're going to fix
oh,
that. So let's get the word out. You did amazing. 42,000,
And
right?
yes, and the next biggest contender for the grassroots campaigns, not RFK, because he's got a lot of corporate money. He's not grassroots by any means. He's the same old war system. But among the grassroots candidates, including the libertarians have been on every ballot in every state for the last 2 years. They have never been suppressed before. But the requirements were so intense that even they were shut out. they only got somewhere under 4,000 signatures. And that's what all the other candidates did. They were less than 4,000. We got 42,000. That tells you how much power we have right now to fight this system and to use this election to turn the breaking point that we're all at. We're all at the breaking point. We can turn that into a tipping point in this election. If we don't win the office, we can win the day by building our capacity to keep going. This doesn't end on election day. So this is for the long haul, and I can't thank you enough, Nicole, for all that you're doing to help get the word out to the most important people, which are those who've had the good sense not to be taken in by this predatory system that's been looking to exploit you. This is exactly who it is that can really drive us towards the promise of democracy that we deserve, and towards an America and a world that works for all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Jill Stein.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you, Nicole. I look forward to it again.
I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed my time with her. I got goosebumps at times, I'm not going to lie. I've been watching her and really enjoying. I've been watching some older YouTubes, and I'm just impressed. So I hope you learned. I hope you enjoyed listening. And if you did like what you hear, follow Jill Stein. JillStein2024.com. She's very active on social media. I love watching the lives and webinars, and just keep learning, stay active. I think we need change, and I no longer fear that, that story, the bullying. I mean, what's the point of voting if I feel like I have to vote for the lesser of two evils? I want peace, and I do want all the changes she's talked about. So for me, Jill Stein 2024, she's going to need support. If you want to get involved, I recommend volunteering, tweeting, whatever you do, like social media promoting. I still call it tweet. But anyway, yes, I hope you're excited. And I do believe, power in the people. There's enough green voters. Half the country doesn't even vote. So I don't know. How about you don't complain if you don't vote, right? So anyway, thank you for listening. Please share, please like, and remember, keep fighting for humanity, and hopefully join me in voting for people, planet, and peace.